Now, I'll be covering the three core principles that I use every single time that I implement a process for myself internally, for our team at Grid.io, for clients whenever we implement Jira. And really, the whole point of these three principles is to keep things simple, keep things frictionless and easy to use and actually enjoyable. That's what we want to get to. We want to get to a process that increase output, but are fun and enjoyable to use. That way, when you're jumping in to complete something in Jira or add a new work item in Jira, you're not thinking to yourself, oh man, this is going to be a chore. It's going to take me 20 minutes to go into Jira, fill out all the required fields, get everything done, continue with it. That's what we want to avoid. We want to make it feel like, okay, cool. Jira is the only place that I track and log my work. Super easy. It'll take me just 30 seconds to jump in, track everything I need to track, and move on. These three core principles is exactly what's going to get you to that point of making Jira enjoyable, frictionless, fun to use, and actually get adoption from the teams that are using it. So let's dive into each of these core principles. I'll explain exactly what they are, and then I'll also do a live demo right after them, showing you very specific examples of where I've seen Jira used wrong and something that you could do as an alternative to get essentially the same result with less work from your end users in that same process. So let's jump into these three core principles. Core principle number one is to design for the skeptics, not the believers. Now, essentially, all that this means is find the person who is most skeptical and design a system for them. Now, why do I say this? Well, it's really because if you're putting together a new process, a new system, a new way of work, whatever it may be, if it's a customer support portal, if it's a HR intake project, if it's a simple task management board, you will always have the people that are like, I'm not sure if that's going to work. Not sure if that's the best solution. Not sure if this is the best way to do it. And you'll always also have the believers who are like, yes, we need this. Let's do it. Let's move forward with it. No questions asked. Let's just do it. So we want to design the solution for the skeptics for a few reasons. Number one is that if we design for the skeptics, we will get buy-in from everybody. And the reason that happens is because a lot of times the concerns that the skeptics have, the believers may not have, and they may not think about until they actually get to using the system. So our goal here is to collect all of the information that we can. And I'm going to bring a couple of analogies from like development and kind of SaaS products that are used very commonly because I think they do a really good job of collecting feedback and applying that to their tool or their software. So one thing that you could do here, and that I've seen done a lot of in SaaS before, is literally just sitting down with the end users and having them verbally walk through a process that you built and say everything that they like, that they don't like, that they're confused about, anything complicated. Have them like talk through it. Take all of those notes. You could give it to AI, ChatGPT if you want, and say, hey, what do we need to fix based on everything that's coming in? What do we need to do in order to make this better, make it streamlined, make it simple to use? And you make those refinements for the people that are skeptical. That way your process is essentially bulletproof. By the end of this, you'll have all the kind of fixes and tweaks and changes that you need to make sure that the skeptical people are like, oh, okay, that's solved for, cool, let's move forward with it. And let's make sure that, this is a good system to use. And you'll get those skeptics to kind of help you build a really, really good, robust system that is going to be very simple and streamlined and easy to use. And we want to do everything we can to collect as much feedback as we can to get as much context and actually be able to implement and tweak based on that. So getting context from them in a call, whatever it is, walking through a process is going to be ideal. This also does something else with the skeptics. Because they are a little bit more involved and they kind of voice their opinions a little bit more, they feel some form of buy-in to the system that you're building. And they end up kind of buying in the solution because you're sort of building it specifically for them. So you're essentially taking the individuals or the individual who is most skeptical and converting them to a believer in the process. And that's one thing that I really love about core principle number one, is that you can pretty much get adoption from anyone just by building a solution that applies to a small group of people. And the reason that is because we're going to account for every possible scenario that may come up and make sure that we build a solution that is scalable, adoptable, and easy and simple to use. So designing for the skeptic, not the believer, that is core principle number one that I use with every single implementation that I work on in Jira. And as we start to dive into number two, make following easier than bypassing, you're going to start noticing a trend here, right? All of these are designed and all of these principles are created to make sure that Jira is simple, is easy to use, is straightforward, is enjoyable. We're trying to not overcomplicate things. And making following easier than bypassing is probably one of the best ways to have end users adopt your process. And I'm sure a lot of you have come across scenarios where you have implemented something, you have uh, put together a brand new process, whatever it is, maybe even designed an SOP, and you put together the best possible solution. But the problem is nobody used it. And the problem with nobody using it is that they just found alternatives, because when you create a process, there's really only one of two things that you could do. You could either follow it or you could go around it. It's only one of those two options. So when we make following easier than bypassing, we make the kind of easiest point of friction to just follow whatever process is created. Now, there's two ways we could do this. I will use the example of an IT support portal or IT support intake form. The reason I want to use this is because all of us are either agents or have submitted a request to get some kind of IT support at some point. So we've all been through the process of trying to ask for help or being on the other side of that and being the agent running the IT support help. So we've all experienced at some point going to a portal. Maybe you've sent a Slack message, you've gone to email, a walk up, whatever it is. You've requested probably at some point some form of IT support for hardware, software, whatever it is. And when you have a portal that is complicated, has too many field options, hard to understand with terminology, it is very hard to submit a request in that portal. So a few ways we can make that easier is, let's say, remove a couple of the required fields. That'll make it easier to submit. Make the terminology very simple and easy to understand. Maybe remove the total amount of form options, or like the grouping options, like in the Jira Service Management portal. Having less options in total to read through and less fields to submit makes following the process easier. Now, you might be looking at this and saying, that we can do as much as we can, right? You could go down to one or two required fields, but it's probably always going to be easier to just send some kind of a Slack message, walk up to your IT guy, to email them. And that is true, which is why we go for option two in some of these scenarios by making the alternative harder. And we kind of do this artificially. So basically, what we're doing here is taking the process that is intended and making that as simple as possible to follow. That way, it's the default choice for everyone. And then we're taking the alternative and we're making it as hard as possible. That way, everybody who, for example, needs to submit a request will just use the default process. That's the goal of what we're trying to do. So a couple of specific examples for making the process harder, the alternative harder, is just saying, hey, anybody who doesn't use the portal or doesn't use the form, we're going to automatically make that a priority for, like the lowest priority possible. It's going to be slower response times. It's going to be slower resolution times because we won't have as much context and we won't be able to log as much information inside of the system. So it'll take us longer just to be able to triage those requests. And right there, we essentially made the default process, which is using the form, the simplest, the most straightforward, and the easiest solution available. And overnight, you'll probably see that literally everybody is just using the simplest and easiest solution moving forward. Now, there's a lot of different ways we could do this. There's a lot of creative things we could do, and I'll show you very specific examples of things I've seen done in Jira by almost every single team out there that you can kind of tweak to make a lot easier. But really, the whole core focus here is that we want to make the solutions that we're building easy to follow and be the default path for anyone moving forward. So we're going to remove all the restrictions that we can, going to make it as simple and as easy as possible to use, to create requests, to move them through the flow of work, and then make everything that is not that as hard as possible. That way we get automatically anybody who is trying to do something to just flow through the intended process. So that's core principle number two. Number one was design for the skeptic, not the believer. Core principle number two, make following easier than bypassing. Core principle number three is to build network effects into the process. Now, what are network effects? A network effect is essentially a concept that the more people use something, the better it will get. And no matter how good, how great, how much utilized your process is today, very likely that within a year, maybe two, maybe five, maybe less, maybe 6 months, maybe 2 months, it'll probably be a little bit outdated and need some updates. So that's why we build network effects into the process, to make sure that we build a solution that is not only great and works really well today, but will work long term for every single team that is going to be using this process down the road. No matter how many people are going to use it, no matter what time period it's in, what new technology comes out, what new tools, features are available, we want to make sure that the system, this process that we're building, is going to be essentially one that lasts and survives forever, and one that could change as time moves on. So we build network effects into the process. A few ways we could do this is, number one, by collecting feedback from anyone using this process. And if you think about like any products that are widely used, right? You could think of phones, laptops. Let's take an iPhone, for example. The more people use an iPhone, the better Apple can make the iPhone, because they could collect more product feedback. They can make more refinements. It's easier to build things at scale. There's a lot of reasons why more people having an iPhone, for example, even iMessage, more people have an iMessage, the more convenient it is to use an iPhone, the better the product gets. And that's what we're trying to build. We're trying to build a system and solution that the more people use, the longer time goes by, the better it will get, so that it could get adoption and be a long-term viable solution for anyone who is using it. And again, at the very simplest form of this is collect some form of feedback on the processes from the people using them. Someone has an idea on, hey, can we tweak this or change that? Automate this part of the process. Can we ask or require this field to be submitted because we'll need this information down the road for whatever reason? Collect that feedback. You could do this in a forum. You could even do this in a Slack thread if you want. Whatever is easiest. I like to use a simple form. And again, this is kind of going back to the SaaS products. A lot of software tools and larger companies use this as a way to make their products better. And that's exactly what we want to kind of steal from them and be able to implement inside of our own processes. We want to collect some form of feedback. We want to spot patterns and trends and things that can make our processes better, and then actively tweak them, modify them, make them better over time, so that when we create this process 3 months from now, it's a far better solution than it was 3 months ago. Because not only can we always make improvements, there's kind of always something that we can tweak and make better, but maybe 3 months from now, there's a new feature available that we can utilize. Maybe there's a new way to categorize requests. Maybe there is no need for a specific request type anymore because of some internal changes at your organizations. Those things will always change, and we need to make sure that our processes always change with them so that they stay relevant. And this is probably one of the biggest things that I see done wrong, because a lot of times when we engage with the client, when we come into work with Jira with a new organization, they actually might have had a phenomenal process that worked for them years ago, but today they're in a place where it's just completely broken, and they have to start from the ground up to rebuild something that is going to be fresh and actually work for them again. And a lot of companies just go through these cycles, right? They build something, they kind of wait for it to decay, they spin up a new initiative to revamp the process, they do all the requirements gathering around to re-implement, and then they go through that cycle all over again. They implement the tool, decay, rebuild. The goal here is that we don't actually need to do that anymore. We can build a process that will grow and scale and change with our team to become better over time. Those are the best processes, because nothing will get better over time by itself. If we leave this process be, it will be completely irrelevant, depending on how fast your company moves, within like 1 to 5-ish years. And we want to focus on creating something that is going to last, get adoption, and work better with the more people use it and the more often it gets utilized. So there's our 3 core principles. Again, if you have questions at any point in this webinar, just go to the questions tab, drop your question down. I could cover specific use cases for you, your team, really anything else. But those are the 3 core principles. We want to make sure we design for the skeptics, not the believer, make following that process easier than bypassing, and then building network effects into the process. So what we're doing here, in summary, is we're designing something that's going to be used by everyone, that is sort of the default option and the easiest way to work, and also is just going to get better over time. And if you follow these 3 core principles, because this is what we do with every process that we build, you will create a system and a process that is probably better than anything else you've used in the past. A lot of times I see companies either miss all 3 of these or 1 or 2 of these, Most of the time, it's all three of them because they'll just build whatever process they can to collect as much information as they can, as much context as they can. They'll make it very hard to follow, make alternatives very easy, and not really do anything about the alternatives. And then they'll never change the process as time goes by. And then all of these core principles just fall flat on their face, and the solutions and systems that they build are completely pointless. And sometimes I've even seen companies build full scale processes and ways of work inside of Jira and Atlassian. And then over time, as soon as they deploy it and go live, within a couple of weeks, it's just not even used. And they spent so much time creating and designing, and what they put together that they really, really thought would work very well just does not work. One specific example of that, I remember a team I worked with, also an IT team specifically, where they tried to implement a portal to get IT requests three separate times. So they tried on three separate occasions to spin up a portal, get people into the portal and submit requests. And they told me that for their company, for their end users, it just wasn't possible. They've tried three times, and each time that they've tried it, it just did not work. Nobody used it. It was, everyone just sent a Slack message or walked up or sent, submitted a phone call, whatever it is. And I just asked to take a look at the portal because I was curious what their implementation looked like. And when I got there, I was confused at how to submit a request because there were roughly 10 groups that I can click on to see roughly five-ish request types per group. It was more than five. I think it was 6 request types per group on average, which brings us to 60 request types that I can possibly submit. From there, each request type had complex terminology. So it said things like submit an incident and service request, which as an end user, you will not even know what that means. As an IT person, you kind of think very technically and in a very specific way, but end users don't really understand that concept, right? They don't understand what a incident is, what a service request, what a change management is. And then when you click on one of these request types, it's filled with like 10 plus required fields. So basically, if I'm an end user who's not technically savvy, I have to go into this portal, I have to read through 60 different request types, of which I don't really even understand, to just submit a form that'll take me 10 minutes to fill out. And then they wonder why there's no adoption to the solution that they're implementing. And it's because it's just too complicated. It's not designed for the skeptics. It's not easy to follow, and it didn't get better over time. They just left it, deployed it, and made 0 changes after the system was deployed. And then they wondered, they're like, okay, wait, we can't get adoption through the portal. Well, we're just going to find a different way of doing this. We'll leave it as walk-ups, emails, whatever. And really what you want to do is follow these 3 core principles when you build a solution to make sure that there is adoption and that the systems you build are actually utilized. Real quick, I know this looks like a lot. And if you'd rather just have me and my team help implement exactly what I'm showing you in this video, that is exactly what we do. We're currently opening up 4 more slots for our Jira strategy. We only run 4 of these per month. If you're interested, hit the first link in the description below.